Hey, welcome to the Midweek Boost. My name is Pastor Matt Perkins. I'm really glad that you've taken a moment to join with us. And this is a time where you can just be refreshed, maybe encouraged. We're going to take a moment, have some worship, and then a brief message from Pastor Dale. You know, I think unlike any other time, God has brought us to this moment for us to maybe talk less and listen more, to be able to look at our society and not look at how other people are wrong or what is wrong with other people, but kind of look inward and say, God, what are you speaking to me during this time? Maybe it's unrest or how do we relate to others around us? Taking a moment and just saying, God, I need you in my life. And Lord, I just ask that you would open my eyes and open the eyes of my heart, that I would see you above everything else. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Oh, open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up and shining in the light of your glory, and pour out your power and love as we sing holy, holy, holy. And we sing, open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. And to see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Oh, pour out your power and love as we sing holy, holy, holy. And we sing holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Singing holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. And that's our prayer today. Now we're going to go to Pastor Dale, and I know that you're going to be encouraged by this word.
Exodus 3:7. The Lord said, I've indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. The desperate condition of humanity is on display all around us. Politics divide us. Hatred is in full force, even in families, because we don't see eye to eye. And much of the aim of protests and demonstrations have not succeeded in bringing us closer, but we now feel farther apart. I want us to remember that this is fundamentally a spiritual problem. It all started in Genesis 3. Sin started with separation from God, which is the guilt, and that produced separation from ourselves, that's shame, and then separation from each other, blame. We move to chapter 4, where brothers Cain and Abel and their struggle in sin leads to Cain killing his brother, and we see how anger leads to the violence of murder. The point is that sin and evil grows. It moves from the personal to the public. Evil escalates. It does not stop at the human heart, but it grows outward. It starts as personal guilt and shame from our separation from God, and then it grows into interpersonal struggles and conflict and even violence. And by the time you get to Genesis 11, where we've been the last couple of weeks, sin has become ingrained into the systems and structures of all society. It eventually leads to war and atrocities. This is the nature of evil. It does not stay in the personal and moral arenas. It always moves out into the social and the structural. It moves from the garden to the globe. And sin is not it doesn't just cause personal anguish and establish itself as a control center for the individual. It will also cause people to degrade the value of human life, kill mercilessly, and perpetuate hatred throughout an entire culture. That's where you get to the book of Exodus, where you see an entire nation that is engineered and designed to oppose God. Egypt is a picture of what happens when sin builds up a head of steam. For Egypt, it is a metaphor of anything that keeps people away from God's dream and oppresses us from being liberated and free. Egypt is a picture of what we are all born into, a force that ruthlessly oppresses. Then in Exodus chapter 5, it shows us how unreasonable sin can be because Moses now appears before Pharaoh to get the Israelites delivered. And Pharaoh, in turn, makes life more difficult on the people of God. In verses 6 through 12 of chapter 5, the Israelites are now commanded to continue making as many bricks as before, but now they're not given the materials to make them. How ridiculous is that? But that's a picture of sin and evil. The destructive force of evil desires to be central in your life and in my life. And remember, it will always take you farther than you want to go. Now, to bring this home, let's focus on the verse we read at the beginning, Exodus 3:7. I have heard them crying. The cry initiates deliverance. In Scripture, when people are crying out, things start to happen. Now, if we chronicle a defining spiritual moment for most of us, it will most likely include the idea of, I hit rock bottom, I didn't know where else to turn, I knew I needed some help, I knew I needed something more in my life. My life was unmanageable, and I needed to surrender. In your own spiritual experience, you know that Exodus begins when you cry out to God. If you're of the mindset that says everything's fine and you don't need help, then you're probably never going to get any help. If you don't need any greater guidance and you don't need any greater deliverance, then you probably won't see redemptive history unfold through you. Central to all I'm attempting to say is this: God always hears the cry of the oppressed. Half of the story, it seems, about Jesus and his ministry is that he's going somewhere with his team, and you read things like, he cried out, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Or somebody's on the side of the road, someone is along the way, and they cry out, and Jesus responded and began an era of deliverance for that person. Central to understanding God is to understand he always hears the cry of the oppressed. Nearly 2,100 times in the Bible, you hear that people cry out in the midst of despair and hope, and God responds. And when you hear the cry of the oppressed yourself, you're with God. When you hear and respond to the cry of the oppressed, you become in partnership with God that becomes a picture of the whole of the gospel. A great friend of People's Church is a missionary. His name is Joe Gordon. He has spent years of his life in northern India and even Laos. Here's a story that he tells, that he found out that there was a village that is one of the highest inhabited communities on the planet. He wanted to go there, feeling it was his spiritual destiny. He thought it would be a day's trip from where he lived, and he took a team with him, and they had hundreds of Bibles and a bunch of literature that they packed. After 3 days driving, they came to the end of a road, and there was a sheer cliff. He was told by a local that it was an hour walk to this village, and 8 hours later, they could see the top of the mountain. They finally arrived to the top of this cliff, and they find 4 huts. They immediately meet a Buddhist priest and find out that no one can read. He's frustrated. He sat down and sent his team to leave the materials and talk to the villagers while he's just waiting in frustration. While he's doing that, a 10-year-old boy sat next to him. He asked the boy about his story. And that little boy told of how his mother had died when he was young and his dad struggled to raise him. One day, his dad and he took a walk. They arrived at a home, and after his dad got done talking with this man, he saw the man give his father some money. And then his dad told him how he now belonged to this man. He cleaned the man's house and clothes for several years. One day, as he came back to the home, after doing his chores, the man beat him with a club. Joe said he could still see the caked blood on his head. In light of that, the boy wandered to this remote village. And then the little boy said to Joe, "I saw you and knew you could help me." Joe took that boy off the mountain that day, and he became part of Joe's family. Today, that boy is a young man that has completed college to be a pastor, because the cry initiates deliverance. The cry is always heard, even from the most remote inhabited villages of our world. When you hear the cry, you are with God. And Joe will tell you that he believes that God had him travel for 4 days just for that boy. Some of us find ourselves in Egypt today, in Egypt of despair, addiction, financial crisis, suicidal thoughts, family and marriage heartbreak, or maybe the hopelessness of how we're even going to make it through. Whatever our Egypt looks like, we all need a liberator. And maybe today, you just need to cry out to Jesus and watch how he responds. And may it be a boost to your week to see how God responds to you.
Well, I trust that that was an encouragement to you. One of the lines that stood out to me when Pastor Dale was sharing the story of the boy that looked at Joe and said, "I saw you and I knew that you could help me." What do people see when they're looking at you? Do they see more what you're against versus what you are for? What is it that you are communicating? I think now more than ever, we need to show our world, show the world that we live in your community, in your workplace, that we are for Jesus and we cry out to him, but we are also for other people. God has amazing things in store for your life and for the people around. I encourage you, maybe take a moment, and if you want to share this on social media, maybe you want to take the link and just text it to someone. Watch that, and then have some conversations following, saying, hey, what can we cry out together for? Find people that aren't like you and have good conversations. That's something that I've been doing over the past couple weeks. I've been calling friends who don't look like me, they don't think like me, and I'm having conversations with them. I want the world to look at me and say, I saw you and I knew that you could help me, because they see Jesus in me. I pray that you have an amazing day and that you enjoy this time for this midweek boost. God bless you.